Hi there. Welcome back to the Cultivive ASMR channel. I hope you're having a good day. Today we're going to do another National Geographic visual exploration. And today we have the edition from April 2023. 8 billion. 8 billion. The population paradox. With some countries expanding and others declining, are we nearing peak population? And it's a cool visual on the front. It's a little beaten up. I don't know if you can tell. But I think a couple people have read this. I think both my parents have read it, and then I think I have read through this before, so it's gone through a couple hands. But today we're just gonna focus on the visuals. As I've said before on these National Geographic videos, if you do want me to do a more thorough reading of the articles, focusing more on the text, please comment below. But for now, I'm just going to focus on the wonderful visuals. Let's get through. Ooh, a hummingbird. Hummingbirds are extremely cool. I really like basically all birds. Hummingbirds are just very interesting though. Just such a uniquely evolved animal. Just very, very particular. They're niche. It's very interesting. Oh, we have a little baby. Getting her close up. And the caption is, crowned with a headband of pink tulle and lace, a baby is photographed at a postnatal care center in Hangzhou, China. Though the nation's population is declining, the center's director says business is good because many mothers with infants seek assistance from professionals to speed their return to work. She's very cute. And then this ad is claiming mermaids are real, but I think they mean someone who is scuba diving. Oh, we have, looks like a parade. Still stepping out. In Sun City, Arizona, retirement community residents march to the beat of their own vitality. So this is a parade at a retirement community. The Sun City Palms stride information at a holiday parade in nearby Litchfield Park in 2021. These glittery outfits. The squad presently ranges in age from 61 to 90. Wow, imagine dancing down the street when you're 90. It feels great to be together, put on our costumes, and perform, says member Kathy Villa. And here you have this guy with a very retro-looking golf cart. Looks nice. In 2017, Curtis Hay, 87, shows off his vintage golf cart after shooting pool at one of Sun City's recreation centers. There's enough activity to keep people our age busy, says Hay, a retired engineer. And then here we have a beautiful lady. I love her hat. Jean Woods, 77, poses for a portrait at the 2020 Sun City Senior Prom at Sundial Auditorium. When she moved to Sun City, she began calling herself Purple because she loves the color. Oh my gosh, I love purple too. Last year, she had her house painted lavender. That's nice. Swimmers from the Aqua Suns synchronized team form a star shape while rehearsing for a 2013 holiday show at the Lakeview Recreation Center. So they've been getting photos from this place for a while. Although the team disbanded as an official club in 2020, some of the women continue to gather each week, practicing routines and swimming together. Sun City has around 120 charter clubs, including groups dedicated to square dancing, ukulele playing, fitness, woodworking, and yoga. I think it certainly should be the hope in our society that all folks, when they get older, continue to have, fulfilling lives and happiness and activity instead of being cast aside. Then there's a little backstory, I guess, on the photographer. I go into the next article. I think I remember reading this article. This was interesting. I don't think it has many visuals, but it's called Patriarchy is Not Destiny. Male-dominant societies may be the norm today, but biology doesn't dictate that, and history shows us other options. I think, oh yeah, okay, we have a nice visual here. This beautiful illustration. When matrilineal thrived in India, I'm not sure if this is the caption for this, but I'll read it. In India, where I once lived, the Nairs of the southern state of Kerala had powerful matrilineal families until relatively recently. They were ruled over by an influential aristocracy, with people living in grand, extended households. Nair women always had the security of the homes they were born in throughout their lives, and were not dependent on their husbands, writes historian Manupalai. They were effectively at par with men when it came to sexual rights. No single theory can explain why matrilineal in Kerala has declined. It was a gradual shift driven by British colonialists and Christian missionaries shocked at the power and freedom that women had, combined with changing social norms as people traveled more widely in the 19th century. Remnants of matrilineal did survive. Kerala is still recognized as being far more gender equal than other parts of India. That's very cool. There is an inset picture here. Looks like from Ghana, power balanced. If the only way of thinking about gender and power is through binary opposition between women and men, it becomes impossible to imagine men sharing status with women, or the balance of power changing with circumstance. But this often occurs in matrilineal societies. For instance, the Asante in Ghana divide leadership between the Queen Mother, a position she holds in her own right, not because she is anyone's mother or wife, and the male chief. It was the Asante ruler, Nana Ya Asantewa, on the left, who led an army to rebel against British colonial rule in 1900. Oh, that's very cool. If you, the men of Asante, will not go forward, then we will, she told the chiefs. I shall call upon my fellow women. Though her forces besieged a British fort for several months, Ya Asantewa ultimately was captured and exiled to the Seychelles, where she died in 1921. She sounds like she was a cool lady. Ooh. I have some sort of smaller insects, like this little plant. Looks like a little succulent. We've got this little heron, and then we have this Egyptian buried portraits, some possibly enhanced along with mummified remains. So this, I think, was an icon that came with someone who was buried. And it looks like they're holding a couple things. I can't tell what they're holding here, but they're holding some sort of bottle here. It's interesting. I'm probably not going to pronounce this correctly, but Ineza Umahosa Grace. She's a beautiful lady. Love her dress. Inspires young people to take action on climate change. I think she's an environmental or climate change activist. And okay, This is the flag of Rwanda. She's from Rwanda and she has the flag. It's very beautiful and doing good things in the world. Some jewelry. Oh, big change. Living large. Oh, and this is like one of those fold outs, and it looks like, oh, this is living large in terms of age. So over here you have a little bit of a comparison chart. At the top you've got immortal jellyfish, which can reverse its life cycle back to a polyp, and it can just sort of theoretically do that infinitely, although in practice these jellyfish probably aren't actually immortal, because at some point they will get got. They'll be eaten by something or destroyed by something, but theoretically they can go through this renewal process over and over again infinitely. 15,000 years old. Hexactinolid sponge, the longest lived animal on Earth. It's a foot tall. That's crazy. That must be in like the Arctic somewhere. 507 years, an ocean quahog clam, which does not deteriorate with age. And okay, it looks like on the side here we have comparisons of terms of what were humans doing that many years ago, when whatever this creature was theoretically born. So for this 15,000 years, you have early populations arriving in North America. That's just such a crazy long time ago. For this 507-year-old clam, you have Magellan's expedition circumnavigating the globe. For this Greenland shark, which is a really cool animal, you have the longest lived vertebrate, and 392 years ago, the Mayflower arrived in Plymouth Harbor. You have this bowhead whale at 211 years old, the longest lived mammal. And author Herman Melville was born, so they have, guy who wrote about whales. 175 years, Aldabra tortoise, the world's oldest land animal. Paul Gauguin, a post-impressionist artist, was born. 122 years, human. The oldest known person, Jean Louise Calment, who lived between 1875 and 1997. She was French, I believe. And 122 years ago, the Wright brothers took their first flight. And then, for comparison, they have the pygmy goby, and this is actual size. So you see that that's even smaller than my, the end bone of my index finger. It's tiny. Pygmy goby, only 8 weeks. The shortest lived vertebrate. That's crazy. But we can open this up a little bit and try to get it to fit on camera. The age of animals. And it looks like they have a sort of correlation chart between longevity and average weight. So higher up something is, longer lived it is. And it looks like things that are very high up. It's a good mix, but you've definitely got a lot of mammals and fish. You have the olm. They don't have a note on the olm, but I do know that the olm is like a cave salamander, and the olm specifically lives in the Dalmatian Alps in like Croatia and Slovenia. And I think that is the oldest lived amphibian that we know about, because its metabolism is so slow. Like, it spends years and years just sitting there. You've got other things like this rough-eye rockfish, orange ruffy. You've got the eastern box turtle, American lobster. Lobsters, if they get lucky, can live a very long time. You've got humans, you've got the Aldabra tortoise, you've got the Greenland shark. Of course, you have a bunch of whales and big fish. And then, of course, more down at the bottom, you have like mice and water possums, salmon, things that don't necessarily live a super long time. There's a bunch of cool things in here. And of course, there's a bunch of birds that live for quite a long time. It looks like the oldest bird that they have on this chart is the pink cockatoo. it is well known that parrots can live a very long time if you take good care of them. And we have a little bit of information on determinants of longevity. 2 factors place powerful evolutionary pressures on animals to adapt. The environment, where cold temperatures, for example, can slow down the aging process, and body size. A larger body size typically leads to a longer lifespan. And then sort of the exceptions to that larger body size are these creatures that have these really slow metabolisms, like this owl and the box turtle. So that's very interesting. Ooh, eyes kind of spook me out a little bit. He's very awake. Behind the mask. The maker of the mask shown here comes from the Balinese village of Mas, known for wood carving. It is very well done. It looks like it has actual hair on it. That's cool. This Balinese mask of the character Pati Manas was carved from lightweight pule wood by a 6th generation mask maker. That's very cool. All right. Memory meets change. As 2 photographers cover Earth's 8 billion, they gather images and insight from lands they know well. So this is like a personal article from the photographers of the main article in this magazine. So a couple folks in a pool. Looks like they were in China. And then we have the other photographer from Lagos in Nigeria. And this is a photo from the early 1990s, showing them with their siblings. Oh god, a full page ad. We're gonna ignore that. Whoa. Oops. Looks like we have got a very close-up photo of an ant. They are wild. I always feel very mixed about seeing close-up photos of insects, because I feel like over the years I've gotten less and less freaked out by bugs. But seeing close-up is still kind of, I don't know, it's kind of, it is strange to see all the little hairs and to look at like their mouth parts and things. It's something that I think, I don't know, the lizard brain just is not a fan of. Ooh. The human population explosion, 8 billion. There are more people on Earth than ever, but that disguises a new reality. This century, we could hit a peak and begin to decline. Some countries will continue to grow rapidly, while others will see their numbers drop. And I feel like this is something I heard really a long time ago, that it is kind of expected that eventually the human population will plateau, and unless we have some dramatic revolution in agriculture or medicine, or we become a multi-planetary species and have, you know, multiple world populations, that it is expected that at some point we're going to plateau, which is interesting, because I feel like growing up, there's always a great fear about overpopulation. And it's interesting to think that the reality might be more nuanced than that. Oh, and this opens. Oh, and this shows, oh dear, this shows the exponential chart. So I'm not sure how to get this all on here, but you start with about 1 billion people in 1802, and then over the next, you know, century or so, a sharp increase. And it looks like, especially around 1950, you really start to go up. And over here you have the projected time. So here we officially hit 8 billion, I think around the end of 2022. And it projects 9 billion in 2036 and 9.7 billion in 2050. You can see the curve kind of starting to slow down. Oh, we have the back here. The demographic divided. When fertility rates drop and workers make up more than 2/3 of the population, a country with a functioning economy has a rare opportunity to invest in itself. China has already reaped this dividend. Nigeria's lies in the near future. But if fertility rates drop too far, below 2.1 births per woman, the number of older adults can overwhelm the system. So, what is this chart? So, the demographic, dividend threshold, and fertility rate. So, it looks like the red line is China, and it's kind of moved around here, and then it shoots up around, between 1975 and 2000, and it looks like it's projected to sharply drop, which I think represents the share of the population that is older and is not necessarily having a whole bunch of children. So it says, beginning of the decline, fears of overpopulation led to the one-child policy in 1980. By 2009, the share of the population that was working age had started its descent. So you start to have more older folks and less births in comparison to the number of working age people. And then in green, we have Nigeria, workforce on the rise. The fertility rate is expected to fall in the coming decades, yielding a higher ratio of workers to dependents and setting the stage for a demographic dividend after 2050. So you can see, starting in 1950, it kind of wiggles around a bit. You can see the fertility rate dropping. Here we are in 2023, and and this dividend is expected to become more China-like by 2050. So that's very interesting. And we also have some comparisons for the United States, India, and Italy. So United States, it's kind of wobbling around a bit. It looks like it's expected to drop. And it says treading water. Immigration has allowed countries such as the US to mitigate a reduction in the fertility rate with an influx of economically productive adults. So we're kind of wobbling around. It looks like we're generally getting a lower fertility rate and possibly starting to get into that dangerous demographic dividend sort of thing, but we're mostly staying in the same place. Then you have India nearing the peak. Nigeria can look to India as an example of what to expect. India is projected to reach its peak percentage of workers in 2032. So you can see it starts here, goes very sharply up to the present day, and then is expected to start dropping by about 2050. And then you have Italy, which, oh dear, that's not really looking good. Over the cliff. Countries with older populations provide a cautionary tale. When the fertility rate is too low for too long, the share of the working population plummets. Oh dear. So that's probably going to be something that they're contending with in the next couple decades. Did not know that about Italy. Oh, and we have a bunch of babies. And some beautiful blankets. On top of the world, these newborns in Noida, India, are among the reasons the country will overtake China this year to become the most populous. I'm not sure if it's officially happened yet. I honestly don't know. Let me know if you know. After mid-century, India's population may begin to decline, but it could remain the largest country through the turn of the century. So, the whole rest of this century, India will be the most populous country in the world. Population growth taps the brakes. So you can see these charts for life expectancy, fertility rate, and population growth. Life expectancy, it goes up. White line is the world generally. There is a tiny little dip for the COVID-19 pandemic, but Nigeria continue to go up, and the dashed lines are the range of uncertainty because, how much can you predict the future? So populations will grow older. By 2050, the average person will live to be almost 78. Increased longevity adds to populations. But as people live longer, they spend more years dependent on the labor force, a drag on economic growth. And then you can see the fertility rate. The whole world is kind of slowly going down. Nigeria is expected to go down pretty sharply. And then China is down right now, but looks like it might slowly go up. Probably because China has reversed the one-child policy. I think it's now a two-child policy because they've seen these charts and they're wanting to try to head off the negative impacts of what's been described here. And the population growth rate of the world going down, and then both Nigeria and China. And China is under this line into shrinking population. So countries will grow more slowly. The worldwide population growth rate fell below 1% per year in 2020, the first time since 1950. If this decline continues, the Earth's population will peak before 2100. So that's interesting. Oh, got a world map. You know I love a world map. A less fertile world. Improving women's access to education, employment, and birth control has helped cut the global fertility rate in half since 1950. That's wonderful. Sub-Saharan Africa, which has not evenly experienced these social changes, and where large families are the norm, is the world's last region to sustain a high fertility rate. As a result, many African populations will continue to grow, while populations will decline elsewhere. So the colors, green, so it's total fertility rate by country in live births per woman. So green is 4 or more, and you can see that much of sub-Saharan Africa is still in that range. Although I think that's expected to change given the other things we've seen, as well as Afghanistan, which is interesting. Then in blue, you have between 2.1 and 3.9, and that kind of gives you a wider swath of countries. We've got some countries in South America and in Asia. And then red, less than 2.1, which is below replacement rate. And red are also area, or these dots are high population density. So red includes China and India, as well as many other areas in the world. And then you can see some age distribution charts. And you don't necessarily want these to be too lopsided because that's where you start to get problems. Ooh. Nigeria. I love the green and white, like the flag, where population is growing. By 2050, Nigeria is expected to squeeze 377 million people into a country less than 1/10 the size of the United States. What will life look like for a child growing up in Africa's most populous country? Oh, I love their outfits. I love this print. I think blue and gold is a really pretty color combination. So it looks like we've got a little family here. Babies make 7. After years of trying to conceive, Foyeke Amaj and her husband, Wanle, welcomed quintuplets as a miracle. Oh my god, quintuplets. Oh my god, that must be a handful. But raising 3 girls and 2 boys has left them in debt. The nation these children will inherit will be very different. By 2050, when they are 29, Nigeria is expected to have added 150 million needed investment. Looks like maybe there's a construction project happening here. Travelers and vendors mingle near the Oshodi bus terminal in Lagos, Africa's largest city with more than 15 million people. That's a big city. I think you can see. I'm not sure. Oh no, this is a power line. For a second I thought there was a bridge in the distance, but this is a power line. You can see the line of buses, and then it looks like we have a market that's on top of these tracks here, as well as construction. There's a lot happening in this picture. Kind of, it feels almost like a Where's Waldo. There's just a lot happening. Despite Nigeria's recent investments in infrastructure, the World Bank estimates the country will need to spend trillions of dollars by 2050 to maximize the potential of its rapidly growing population. And that's always a positive way to look at it with these populations, is because, you know, the idea of population, you know, all these millions of people who are going to be added, it's this very nebulous thing, and it can almost feel like a fearful thing. You know, you imagine these masses of people taking up space and eating things and whatever, but you have to remember that every person is an individual, a human being with value, and that they can, each individual person has potential to add to the world around them. So that's a very positive way of looking at it. Ooh, she's very pregnant. Somewhere last fall, Earth welcomed its 8 billionth human, marking the largest number of our species to live on the planet at once. It's crazy. And then birthing the next generation. Oh, they're all pregnant. She was just very prominent. Oh my goodness. She's ready to pop. But these other 2 women are also pregnant. Birthing the next generation. Expectant mothers wait to see Itoko Ibiere in the lab coat, who's kind of more obscured, who's worked as a midwife for 35 years. Though Nigerian healthcare has seen some improvement, 1 in 175 mothers still dies in childbirth because of a lack of health facilities and trained medical staff. Which is sad, but luckily these women are able to see a doctor, a midwife, which is good. Oh. Lots of people. Green and white. This lady's very beautiful. She looks very happy. 6 decades of freedom. A parade in Lagos commemorates Nigeria's 1960 break from colonial rule. The nation is Africa's largest democracy, but leaders have struggled to build unity among its more than 200 ethnic groups. Oh, geez, yeah. How do you build, unity, a cultural identity with so many different kinds of people? President Muhammadu Buhari has emphasized that free, fair, credible, and transparent elections are crucial to Nigeria's success as its population grows. Yes. I know that in other post-colonial states, democracy has been a bit of an issue, with corruption and all these things, but I hope that Nigeria is doing well. The rise of Africa. Largest countries in the world by population, among those projected to have more than 10 million people in 2050, and the sub-Saharan countries are shown in green. So you can see these green lines starting in 1950, and here we are in 2023, that many of these green lines, these sub-Saharan countries, are expected to further shoot up by 2050. 2/3 of global population growth between now and 2050 will come from sub-Saharan Africa. Nigeria is forecast to become the world's 3rd most populous country by then, with a median age under 23. I think right now either the United States or Indonesia is third most populous. So Nigeria will overtake us. And as they said, in a smaller area. Oh, very fluffy. Very fluffy. And this guy, he's got a cane. The fashion. The growing elite class, arriving in style at their wedding reception. Television host Jimmy Akinsola and fashion consultant Kanayo Ebi belong to a small but growing class of prosperous younger adults. Income is a major factor in Nigerians' marriage plans. The country's poorest women wed at a median age of 16 and the richest at 24. I just love her coat. It's just so over the top. And here we've got, looks like a family lounging, maybe escaping the heat. I can only imagine how hot it is in Nigeria. Oh my goodness, because they are right on the equator. And right now I'm in North Carolina, and if you've been in the eastern United States this summer, then you know there is a heat wave, and it has just been hot and sweaty, and I can only imagine how bad it would be at the equator. Oh my goodness. Making do with little. Emmanuel and Nwakego Emenike live with their 4 children in a one-room apartment in the city of Ajegunle, excuse me. About 30 people share the building, which has no running water or electricity. The environment for raising kids is very bad, says Emmanuel, and yet he and Nwakego managed to send them to school and religious classes. And at least for the camera, they look very cheerful. This kid looks a little sleepy though. Can't blame him. Got some livestock. It's an interesting overhead photo. Food under pressure. On market day in the north central state of Nasarawa, herders bring thousands of cows to Kefi Cattle Market, among the country's largest. More than 70% of Nigerians practice some type of agriculture, but food sufficiency has declined as a result of poor farming conditions and the rising population. Nigeria annually imports $22 billion of food, notably wheat and fish. Hopefully, as they invest more in infrastructure, that will include agricultural improvements. There's different kinds of cows, so many of them. Ooh, looks like we're at a club. A place to be oneself. Ashley Okoli dances at a Lagos nightclub, which offers a rare welcoming space for people of all sexual orientations. Okay, I see, okay. Same-sex relationships are illegal in Nigeria, yet in the past 4 years, LGBTQ activists have celebrated Pride Month with performances and protests in some parts of the country. I really wish them well. Things will get better. I love the color of their outfits, combining education and religion. In the town of Ifako, outside Lagos, students at Takwa Private School get a modern education with a foundation of Islamic principles. In Nigeria's predominantly Muslim north, where conflict has shuttered many schools, only around half the children receive an education. certainly hope that improves. These girls look very happy. Definitely wish them the best. Oh, interesting. And so this is kind of in the opposite direction from Nigeria was kind of growing this way, and China shrinking this way. China has been the most populous country for centuries, but India will surge to the top this year as China's population begins a perilous decline. What happens when a nation passes the tipping point? Oh, here we are. Oh my gosh. Oh, little babies. At a postnatal center in Hangzhou, caregivers tend to babies while their mothers recuperate. Private centers like this one offer new mothers who can afford it the time needed to recover. Known as Zuo Yuezi, a traditional Chinese medicine. The cost of raising children in modern China is a key factor in the country's declining population. Little babies in their little pink blankets. Oh, here we are in the city. Millions on the move. Chongqing, a sprawling industrial city in southwestern China, grew rapidly for many decades, spawning a still vibrant tradition of eating hot pot. Oh, here we are. Eating hot pot in crowded outdoor venues. You can see all these folks crowded outside of these like restaurant storefronts. The dense urban area's population is estimated to be more than 17 million. That's a lot of people. As the region developed, subways were built above and below ground to ease congestion. We've got a family. Got some older folks and maybe a granddaughter who looks a little skeptical. The one and only 5-year-old Kong Niling visits her great-grandfather, or great-grandparents, oh my goodness, Lu Junfu, and great-grandmother and great-grandmother Zhou Yafen in Shanghai. The couple had 3 children who each had 1 child in accordance with the one-child policy, but Niling is their only great-grandchild, so they are doting on her. It looks like she might be in like a princess costume. Oh my goodness. We're in a pool. I've got dogs. Look at these dogs. Oh my goodness. We've got a floaty. Oh my goodness. Keep an eye on the ball. Li Guangyu and Pixie Lim, or sorry, that would not be Pixie. That would be Pi Xia, I think it would be. Pi Xia Lim take their dogs for a swim at a pet activity center in Shanghai. A pet activity center. Oh my goodness. That sounds delightful. Li has a dog and 3 cats. I think that might be him. He doesn't want the responsibility of caring for children, but dotes on his pets. That sounds very familiar. I think in America, especially among millennials, that is a very familiar experience. I am their father, Li says. I'm ready to sacrifice for them and give them time. Oh, that's very sweet. He's got some lucky dogs. Oh my goodness. Oh, I just love this one's little tongue. Oh, it's so cute. Oh, focus. Shaping the future. At the after-school center she founded in Zhejiang in Anhui province, Mei Shuyun teaches children to write Chinese characters. 8-year-old Jin Zixuan's parents both have jobs and aren't able to watch her during the workday. My goodness. It's amazing the language plasticity that's in little kids' brains, because you think, like, oh my gosh, these little kids are going to have to learn thousands of these Chinese characters, and how are they going to do that? But they just do. They just do. Their brains are just, you know, all children's brains are just, like, so incredible at learning. It's just really impressive. I wish all the time that I still had that, like, language learning ability that children have just so naturally. And now it's something that you have to, when you're older, it's something you have to really work at to learn a language. And here we have, it looks like we've got some farming activity, but with these high rises in the background. A way of life transforms. Tian Sigua, 80, and his wife, Hu Zhangzi, Hu Zhangzi, 77, tend a plot on the outskirts of Chongqing. In exchange for an apartment in a new high-rise, millions of farmers like them have surrendered their ancestral lands. The Chinese government is rapidly developing farmland on the edge of cities. So they might just be on the edge. I thought maybe they were working on like a community garden or something, but I think they're on the edge of the city. Still farming. Oh, I think we might have a music recital. Practice makes perfect. Former concert violinist Song Xinsha, who I believe is probably this woman, because I think she's the only adult in the shop, teaches children in Shanghai. Well-off Chinese parents with only one child often pay for extracurricular activities to ensure future success for their son or daughter, adding to the expense of raising a child in today's China. They've all got little violins. And we have women on the move. Very cool. Making strides. Wan Liping in the center, probably this woman, a retired doctor, practices with other older women in Nanjing for a show billed as Beautiful Mother Fashion Week. The women say they had little opportunity to express themselves or celebrate their beauty growing up in a more tradition-bound China. They are beautiful ladies. I like their skirts. And these folks, what are these folks doing? Well, they're having some sort of good time. So they've got beer. No strings attached. In a vivid display of how gender roles are shifting in urban areas. Women at a Shanghai karaoke bar, okay, that's what's going on, enjoy the company of Liu Yuzhia, a male escort hired for their night out. Okay. Young professional women in China are increasingly choosing their careers and social lives over settling down to marry and have children. A bunch of words. And married? I don't know how happy she looks. Maybe she's just very serious. Got a beautiful dress. The rising cost of child rearing has led newlyweds Xi Lin and Gua Huanhuan, who live in Chongqing, to plan on having just one child, or perhaps none. Raising children, Gua thinks, is too demanding. I want to give my child the best, she says. But I also want to have my own life and not be tied to childcare. That's interesting. Oh. And I think that is the end of the 8 million section. And we are on to seasons out of sync. So getting more into an effects of climate change sort of area. And we have this cool visual of this snowbank. A snowbank lingers into July and Colorado's West Maroon Basin, home to rolling fields of larkspur, columbine, paintbrush, and fireweed. Then we got some scientists. Looks like they're probably doing some sort of vegetation survey, something like that. Scientist David Noya at Far Right in Bayshore has spent 50 summers tracking flowers, hummingbirds, and insects in high alpine meadows at the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory in Gothic, Colorado, just outside Crested Butte. You can see the mountains in the background. So beautiful. Here, Inoya and his scientist son, Brian Inoya, I think that might be his son, stretch a measuring tape across a research plot while other scientists catalog a field of aspen sunflowers. That is a really beautiful spot. We have more of the mountains. Ooh, who do we got? Who do we got? Looks like we've got like a marmot or biker or something. So we have kind of a selection of these different seasonal photos. We've got another shot from this meadow with this boulder. We've got a little pica. I think it is a pica. We have these fall colors. Close up of a leaf. This pica's very cute. And I just love the fall colors. I'm worried now that I'm in North Carolina that I won't see as spectacular fall colors as I did up north. But I'm sure it'll still be nice. And this is just beautiful. Don't you just want to be there? The Elk Mountains, carved by glaciers, so overflow with flowers in summer that this region is known as Colorado's wildflower capital. Flowers bloom 4 weeks earlier than they did 30 years ago. So that's how things are changing. And it's just a really beautiful place. A team led by ecologist Rebecca Irwin, at left with Jade McLaughlin, tracks the flight times and shifting demographics of pollinators in a meadow. Many types of bees are netted, nudged into plastic files, identified, and then marked with color to help prevent recapture. Oh, to prevent recapture, so if in the future they get one of the bees that has the color dot on it, they know to immediately let it go. Carry on with its bee business. Some Queen Anne's lace, it looks like, in the front. I assume Queen Anne's lace. Out west, the flowers might be slightly different, but it's probably Queen Anne's lace. Oh my goodness. Oh, this hummingbird. David Inoya has caught and banded thousands of hummingbirds to track migrations and behavior. He learned that the arrival of broad-tailed hummingbirds from Mexico once coincided with blooms of glacier lilies, whose nectar they require. Today, lilies often begin to bloom before the hummingbirds show up. Oh. Guess they'll have to adjust to that. It's just so cute. Look at it. It's so beautiful. Here we have a lab with a collection of insects. In her lab in Gothic, Irwin hovers over boxes of bees her team has collected and pinned. Irwin has helped identify about 200 species of native bees, each an important pollinator with a specific biological clock and seasonal pattern. It's very cool. Everybody has their place in the environment. I have some maps here. Change of pace. So it looks like we have change in date of leaf emergence. So the more red something is, the more severe the change in date is. It looks like, especially out west, that seems to be happening. And then the Southern Rockies ecoregion that is specifically focused on in this article is outlined here. And it looks like in blue you have some later leaf emergence, whereas the red is earlier because of warmth. There are some areas that are a little blue because it's coming a little later. You can see that snowmelt is coming earlier, the hummingbirds are coming earlier, and the glacier lilies are blooming earlier. And then this close-up of the Southern Rockies ecoregion shows the different habitats in different colors, with alpine zones and subalpine forests, shrub and grassland. It seems like a beautiful area. That would be interesting to visit. It's beautiful. Stands of aspen, like those along Ruby Anthracite Trail, are so common across Colorado's Rocky Mountains that leaf change observations can offer scientists insights on climate change. It's a beautiful place. Oh, we've got a guy, we've got some snow. Billy Barr, who spells his name without capital letters. Okay, I thought that was, you probably can't even see on the video, but this is a lowercase bar. I thought maybe that was a misspelling, but it is not. Has lived in Gothic since the early 1970s, much of that time without electricity or running water, and sometimes as the only winter resident. He's a mountain man. A data geek, he began measuring his environment, including snow depth and temperature. While his cabin is now solar-powered and his gear more sophisticated, Barr still regularly documents nature. So it sounds like he's an amateur naturalist. And I don't say amateur meaning like, oh, he's an amateur. I mean like non-professional, but still, you know, clearly very experienced. Then we've got a notebook with some data. 5 decades of data, painstakingly kept by Barr in a series of handwritten journals, are now critical to our understanding of climate-driven changes in Colorado's snowfall and temperature. They affect everything from wildflower seasons to the first appearance of American robins and yellow-bellied marmots. I can see that he does know like what birds he sees. Like he notes stellar jay and mountain chickadee. So that's interesting. You can see why then these notebooks would be valuable for science. Ooh, got a beautiful mountain. Like during sunrise, first light hits Gothic Mountain in early February, when much of life hibernates. What happens next as nature's schedule continues to shift in every wild system? We are about to find out. It's a beautiful place. Ooh. In awe of ants. Oh my goodness. Look at this guy. Or probably cow. That is a close-up. Oh my goodness, look at these pictures. Just the hairs. It's just very strange to think of insects having hair. I think it is. I think the hair in insects is like physiologically different. I'm not sure how you would put it from our hair, but it looks the same. Extreme close-ups reveal the uncommon traits of one of our planet's most common insects. Oh, hello. Cornfield ants, who I assume are these guys, maintain a mutualistic relationship with aphids, who are these little guys. The ants tend to the smaller insects, guarding against predators, and in return are allowed to sip honeydew off the aphids' bodies. When they say off their bodies, I think that means that they poop it out. But, nature, everything's fine, They don't have the same concepts of what's gross. Ooh, got a line of ants. The ants go marching. Above, some black garden ants proceed in a line, as others pause to sip from a drop of sugar water the photographer has left for them. And these guys, maybe they're sharing. They're having a little ant date. Sharing some sugar water. Ooh. It's got these yellow hairs. Though ants are tiny, we can't help but be aware of them. They are among the most ubiquitous and successful creatures on Earth. A quote from Eleanor Spicer Rice, an entomologist. I love entomologists. They're just like, I don't know, man. They're just so, every entomologist I've ever met or read like an article from is just so unapologetically like in love with their field and with insects, even though the rest of society is like, ooh, bugs. And I just love them for that. Each marigold-colored hair stands out on the abdomen of, oh dear, we have a long scientific name, Camponotus fulvopilosus, a carpenter ant from southern Africa. I wonder why they have this bright yellow. That's cool though. Ooh. There we go, got some larvae or something. Ants undergo a 4-stage metamorphosis as they grow from eggs to adults. Here, a yellow meadow ant, found in Europe and Asia, carries a larva that's in the 2nd stage of development. Next, the larva will become a pupa. And you're just so close up that you can see like the individual grains of the dirt and all the little hairs. Oh, who's this guy? Ants whole in parts. Above, we have this Camponotus singularis from Southeast Asia. He's got like this, I'm not sure if that's like red or plum colored, but that's interesting. And then you have a selection of some other ants. And you can see, I think these are all heads except for this. This looks like the thorax, or abdomen, excuse me. But the rest are heads. And it's interesting how different they are from each other. You think of ants as all kind of looking the same, but the close-up reveals differently. Getting towards the end here. These big guys. Depending on her diet as a larva, a female ant can mature into a queen, a major worker, which is this one, or a minor worker, which is this one, which is a lot smaller than the major worker. Major workers defend the colony, carry heavy items, and chew tough food. Minor workers do tasks like feeding others and cleaning the nest. These two sip a sugary treat that Nika left, who I think is the photographer, giving them a little treat. It's very interesting. The longer I look at them, the less squicked out I am. You kind of get used to it. They're just very cool to look at. They're one of the most common animals on the planet, and yet looking at it is like looking at an alien. It's just so different from us. And I think this is the last page. Looks like we've got a seal. The waters around the Galapagos Islands, a well-known biodiversity hotspot, may soon grow richer. In 2021, Ecuador, Colombia, Panama, and Costa Rica agreed to join the marine reserves to create a more than 200,000 square mile protected zone along migratory routes for whales, sharks, and sea turtles. Mittermeier, who's the photographer, I think, spent 3 months in the eastern Pacific photographing diverse species, including these cardinal fish darting past a Galapagos sea lion as a sea lion. Diving here makes me believe in a better future, she says. So we're off the Galapagos. That's a nice note to leave it on. There's always hope to be found in nature. If we take the right actions, we can take advantage of how resilient nature is and create improvement. All right. Well, I think that was a really nice edition of National Geographic. I think there's a lot of informative, I was about to say informative info, but a lot of informative content and a surprising amount of hopeful content for something that seems centered. This article was supposed to be about overpopulation and things, but I think this magazine overall had kind of a hopeful note, which I appreciate. I hope that you enjoyed this edition of National Geographic on the Cult of Eve ASMR channel. I hope you have a good rest of your day and night. I hope you feel more relaxed. I hope you get some good sleep. I hope you know that you deserve good things. And I'll see you next time.